Hi guys, have a great night. You're lying there still and quiet, and somewhere in the distance of your mind, a candle flickers against a stone wall. The air smells like beeswax and damp wool. A cat sighs in the corner, curled into a puddle of fur on a woven mat. Outside, the wind brushes gently against shutters that don't quite close. Welcome to the medieval night. But don't get too cozy yet, because the moment you step inside a medieval woman's bedtime routine, you're stepping into a world of splinters, superstition, and slow-burning secrets. Truth is, you probably wouldn't survive 5 minutes of it. Not because it's scary, well, not always, but because sleeping was a kind of survival game. A scratchy, drafty, flea-nibbled spiritual balancing act with one foot in the afterlife and the other in cold straw. Don't forget to subscribe and share this channel with someone who loves soft bedtime stories. Tonight, let your mind drift along with us, and may this soothing story help you find the sweetest dreams. And if you're listening from a little village, a big city, a quiet attic, or a soft couch, drop your location and local time in the comments, or just share how you're feeling right now. We'd love to hear what's sitting in your heart. Let it go with us. As you lie there, let your mind grow soft and open, ready to wander through this gentle story until sleep finds you. Now, back to that candle. You watch it cast its trembling light over bare stone walls and wooden rafters above. These are not glamorous rooms, they're not even clean. They're cold, thick-walled, and heavy with soot from the hearth. Smoke rises from a fireplace that doesn't draw properly, leaving a thin fog of warmth and ash hovering in the air. But to the medieval woman lying in bed or on a pallet of straw tucked against a back wall, this is home. And bedtime begins the moment the light changes. Darkness came fast back then. No electricity, of course, and winter nights could stretch nearly 15 hours. Candles were precious expensive. If your family had bees, you might have a few sticks of beeswax saved up for feast days. More often, you relied on tallow candles made from animal fat that smelled exactly how you'd imagine. So as the sky deepens outside, 1 or 2 candles might be lit, just enough to dress by, or undress. Maybe the room is shared between sisters, servants, even unrelated families, if you're among the poor. Privacy is a concept that hasn't been invented yet. Everyone sees everything, not that they talk about it. You loosen your girdle, untie your sleeves, and unbutton your shift. The fabric scratches your skin where it's been sweat stiff all day. One sock on one sock, missing no matter. The room smells of wool old bread, stale bedding, and lavender bundles hung to dry. You step over the dog. Every household has one curled beneath the bed, twitching in dreams of rabbits. Sometimes the bed itself is curtained, but only if you're wealthy. If you are, the wood is carved in swirls and vines, and you climb up into it like a ship. If you're not, it's just a wooden frame, a lumpy sack of hay or straw, and maybe a woolen blanket that smells of mildew from last winter. One mainstream fact: most people, even nobility, didn't sleep through the night in one stretch. They often had a first sleep and second sleep with an hour or more of wakefulness in the middle, used for prayer, stoking the fire, or other things. So bedtime wasn't always final. The first sleep began early, sometimes right after sunset. And that long middle hour, that's where secrets wandered. Now, quirky tidbit. Medieval people believed that candlelight attracted demons if you stared too long into the flame. Staring into fire was considered a spiritual gateway. So, If you were caught doing it too long before bed, an older woman might gently turn your face away. You shift under the covers. The sheets aren't really sheets, more like linen sacks or nothing at all. If you're in a nunnery, you sleep on a wooden board with a folded cloak as your pillow. If you're poor, you sleep wrapped in your own clothes. That scratchy tunic from the day it's now your blanket. Hope you don't mind. Historians still argue whether people shared beds out of affection, necessity, or economy. Probably all three. Women slept together, sometimes, strangers, sometimes not. They curled for warmth, whispered, shared stories, and sometimes secrets they couldn't say by daylight. There's no sound now but the crackle of the dying fire. Someone snoring in the next room. The chamber walls are thick, but not that thick. If you're lucky, no rats rustle tonight. A last candle is snuffed with a damp finger or a tiny brass extinguisher shaped like a bell. The shadows stretch, the air grows colder. You pull the covers up tight around your ears, and finally it's night. Except you still hear someone whispering. You can't make out the words, but you know one of them is laughing softly beneath her breath, and you realize something very strange. Even in the cold, hard silence of the medieval world, bedtime was the hour when women became most alive. The moment the wimple comes off, something else happens, you start to hear the truth. The day belongs to duty, but the night belongs to whispers. You're sitting cross-legged on a creaky wooden bed, fingers working slowly through your tangled hair. The wimple, once tightly bound under your chin, like a modest little prison, has been folded and set aside. Your scalp tingles in the cool air. That alone is relief. Your sister, or maybe your cousin, or maybe just the girl who sleeps 3 feet from you on the straw mat, is unpinning her veil too. In the faint glow of the candle stub that's somehow still sputtering, the veil floats down like tired silk. She exhales. And that's when the stories start. Whispers fill the room like warm steam. Low voices careful not to wake the child in the corner, or the old aunt with the unpredictable snore. But they come anyway, giddy, gossipy, sometimes wicked. Because medieval women didn't stop talking just because the priest said they should, especially not at bedtime. Tonight's tale might be about a neighbor's chickens that suddenly stopped laying. Suspicious, right? Could be a curse. Last week, the blacksmith's wife was seen slipping something strange into the church font. The night before that, someone said a nobleman's daughter was caught slipping out of the bakery in her nightdress, with someone else's apron tied around her waist. You're barely keeping from laughing. Your hand is over your mouth. The room feels warmer now. Closer. There's a comfort in gossip, not the cruel kind, but the survival kind. Talking about others meant you weren't the one being talked about. It helped women test boundaries in a world where their voices rarely counted in daylight. But here, in the soft, unlit corners of the night, they could rehearse opinions, joke about bishops, even grumble about husbands if they had them. Here's a mainstream fact. Medieval women rarely had any legal authority over their lives, but in private, they wielded social power in clever and quiet ways. Whisper networks, herbal knowledge, matchmaking gossip, they held villages together and sometimes tore them apart. And the fringe tidbit. You'll like this. Some women believed their wimples trapped bad dreams, like a kind of spiritual filter. So a few, especially older widows or village healers, refused to sleep without their head covered, even if it meant binding it with an old scrap of linen. Protection wasn't always about modesty. Sometimes it was fear of the night crawling in through your ears. The room quiets for a moment. A log pops in the fire downstairs. You lie back. The mattress groans. It's not really a mattress, just a linen tick stuffed with straw that smells like last year's barn. Still, it's better than sleeping on stone. You stretch your legs. One foot bumps the cool wall. Someone nearby exhales, and without opening her eyes, she murmurs something into the dark. It's not Latin. It's not a prayer. It's a memory. She's talking about the way her mother used to hum while washing linens in the stream, how her grandmother could dry herbs just by hanging them above the hearth. She's half asleep already. You let her voice drift over you like a threadbare shawl. And here's the thing about nighttime stories. They're a kind of inheritance. Things mothers wouldn't say in the daylight. Things daughters shouldn't be told. They slide out during these late-night hushes, like pearls dropped into a basin. You shift again. The warmth of the body beside you is steady comforting. The closeness isn't awkward. This is what safety feels like here. Not locks on doors, not thick walls, but the shared breath of someone who'd shake you awake if they smelled smoke. Historians still argue whether these whispered spaces between women were sacred, subversive, or simply necessary, but they happened again and again in households rich and poor, noble and common. They were the invisible architecture of a woman's life, the silent foundation under her day. You're almost asleep when the laughter bubbles up again. Someone tries to tell a joke about a monk and a goat, but you can't finish it without snorting. You cover your face with your hand, muffling your giggles in the crook of your elbow. And that's how it was most nights. Not silent, not stoic, not some grim candlelit painting from a museum wall. No, bedtime was one of the few times a medieval woman could exhale the day, strip away the performance, and be a little ridiculous if she wanted to. You roll onto your side cheek against the rough linen and listen to the last of the voices. Someone hums a tune. Someone yawns. One girl is still whispering, even though the others have fallen quiet. She's telling a story no one asked for, but everyone wants to hear. You don't catch all the words, but it doesn't matter. The wimples are off, and the whispers are on. You are safe for now in this little corner of the night where women tuck their secrets like lavender beneath a pillow. And you drift, just like they did. Night after night, the bed creaks beneath you, not in some romantic, dreamy way, but in a bone-jarring, splinter-in-your-thigh kind of way. Welcome to the medieval sleeping arrangement, where comfort was more a rumor than a reality. You shift again, hoping to find a sweet spot in the uneven stuffing of your mattress. But this isn't memory foam. It's straw. Plain old straw stuffed into a coarse linen sack called a palliasse, flattened by use and suspiciously rustling in the night. Some unlucky soul might even find a beetle, or two still hanging on. The bed frame itself is a humble construction. If you're lucky, it's wood. If you're not, it's still wood, just badly built and uneven. Nails. Those are precious. Most joints are wedged or lashed with rope. The slightest movement sends a wave of groans through the slats. You're sharing the bed. Of course, 2 to a bed is typical 3 if it's a cold winter. And you all sleep fully clothed. Modesty isn't the reason. It's warmth. Above you, there's a low ceiling, cobwebs in corners, A little soot on the beams from the hearth, smoke below. The blanket smells a bit like damp dog, but it's woven tightly and you're grateful for the weight. No duvets here. Just thick wool, or for the wealthy, a down-filled coverlet, though even those got musty fast. Here's your mainstream fact. Beds in medieval times varied enormously by class. The poorest might sleep on bare floors wrapped in a cloak. The richest, giant four-poster beds with carved headboards, curtains, and embroidered pillows stuffed with feathers. But don't let that fool you. Feathers were rarely cleaned. A noble's pillow could smell worse than a peasant's mat. What about pillows? You lift your head and feel for yours. It's a lumpy affair. If you're from a modest household, it's stuffed with chaff or dried grass. If your household is richer, maybe it's filled with down if the geese were generous. Either way, it's flat, misshapen, and barely worthy of the name. You roll onto your back and feel the chill creeping in from the stone floor. It seeps upward like a fog. There's no insulation. That's not a modern problem. It's a medieval reality. Walls are thick, but they breathe like lungs. They suck in the night and exhale dampness. One foot pokes from beneath the blanket. A mistake. It's instantly cold. You tuck it back in, curling your toes. And here's a quirky tidbit for you. Medieval people believed that sleeping with your mouth open allowed evil spirits to enter. So, women would sometimes tie a light kerchief around the chin to keep their jaw gently closed at night. You imagine it, half the village asleep, with their faces gently trussed like sleepy roast chickens. Downstairs the fire is burned to coals. If you're in a smaller home, there's no upstairs at all. The fire is right in the center of the room, and the whole family sleeps around it. Heads pointing toward the heat, the smell of smoke lingers in every garment, every hair strand, every breath you take. Historians still argue whether women had distinct sleeping areas at all, or if the whole household simply bundled together by age duty or proximity to the warmest corner. Many think privacy in the modern sense didn't exist. It was more like strategic positioning. You sleep near who you trust, or near the door if you're a servant, near the cradle if you're a nursing mother. And yes, lice were an issue. So were fleas. So was everything that lived in straw. People kept combs for the hair and tools for the bedding. But there's only so much you can do when bathing is a monthly event and laundry is a half-day ordeal. Still, bedtime had its gentle rituals. You pull the covers tighter, listening to the muffled sounds around you. Somewhere someone murmurs a prayer. A few words in Latin. You don't understand them, but you repeat them under your breath just in case, because why not? Evil spirits, demons, the lingering souls of the unburied dead. It's better to be cautious. The mattress dips slightly as your bunkmate turns. You both sigh. There's a shared weariness to it, the sound of two women trying to forget the aches of the day. Outside, a dog barks in the distance. The shutters rattle faintly in the wind. You glance toward the ceiling and think about all the things you didn't say. The words you swallowed during dinner. The looks exchanged across the hearth. The letter you can't read but know was from someone you shouldn't be thinking about. You pull the blanket up to your nose. These beds, uncomfortable as they are where everything happens. Crying, laughing, loving, birthing, dying. The bed is both refuge and battlefield. It holds secrets no wall ever heard. There's another pop from the fire below. The floorboards creak, someone going to relieve themselves maybe. And you try to go still. The only movement now is your breath, soft and rhythmic. You found your hollow in the straw, the one curve of comfort carved by habit. You settle your head. The ceiling above you fades into blur. And in this moment, despite the cold, despite the lice, despite the long day behind and the longer one ahead, you almost feel content. Because the wooden bed, the featherless pillow, the sagging mattress, they are yours. And they hold a kind of peace you can't quite explain. Even if it smells like goat, you reach down and tug at your shift. It's bunched awkwardly under your side, and the fabric is scratchy from too many washings in lye soap. Welcome to the secret world of medieval nightshirts, where comfort came second to practicality and fashion. Wasn't invited. Let's be honest, when you think of medieval bedtime clothing, you probably picture something romantic. Flowing white gowns, delicate embroidery, maybe a ribbon or two, fluttering dreamily in candlelight. Well, not quite. You're wearing what is essentially a long tunic. Sometimes linen, sometimes coarse wool, sometimes whatever fabric was available that didn't smell like turnips. It's a basic garment, long enough to keep your legs warm, loose enough to allow breathing room, and durable enough to survive the year. Literally, the year. One good nightshirt might be used every night until next winter, and possibly longer. For some women, especially in poorer households, there was no separate nightwear at all. They simply loosened the ties of their day dress and slept in that, or stripped down to their undertunic and tried not to think about how much it itched. Now, if you were lucky and wealthy, you might own a designated bedrobe. That's a long, voluminous garment worn only in the chamber, soft and warm, sometimes edged with fur. Think of it as the medieval version of a fuzzy dressing gown, except with fewer bunnies and more buttons. Mainstream fact time. By the late Middle Ages, it became more common for people of means to own a separate nightshirt, especially in urban centers where privacy and fashion slowly gained importance. Some of these were actually quite fine embroidered cuffs, neat stitching, even personalized with initials. A sign of wealth and status, of course. Just don't expect lace or silk, not unless you were royalty or a very lucky mistress. Now for the quirky tidbit. There are actual medieval records of women being buried in their nightclothes. It was seen as a sign of purity, being laid to rest in the garments of sleep, as if death itself were just a longer slumber. Some nuns even requested it specifically. A final soft goodbye. But in your case, your shift is practical. You wriggle to get more comfortable, knowing full well that the fabric is going to twist again the moment you try to turn over. The ties at the collar are simple. No buttons, no frills, just a loop and a bit of twine. You tuck your feet up inside the hem and try not to think about the slight dampness at the edge, maybe from the hearth's humidity, maybe from something you'd rather not identify. Historians still argue whether nightwear was considered a true separate garment in most households or just a nighttime repurposing of everyday clothing. But based on what was found in wills and inventories, it seems nightshirts held their own quiet place in the wardrobe, less about fashion, more about routine. You glance across the room. Another woman is already dozing. Her mouth is slightly open, and the cloth cap on her head has slipped sideways. You smile softly to yourself. These are the moments that go unrecorded in history, the small, unglamorous corners of human life that somehow feel the most real. You run your hands over your own cap, adjusting it. These were common, simple linen or wool head coverings worn at night to keep the head warm and the hair clean. Some women even believed sleeping without one could lead to madness. a superstition born from centuries of trying to make sense of cold floors and colder winds. Then there are the secret pockets. Yes, really. Some shifts had tiny sewn-in pockets, little hidden flaps or slits near the waist. A woman might tuck a charm inside, or a pebble from a holy site, or a lock of her child's hair wrapped in cloth. The things you keep close when you think no one is watching. The fire below crackles again. You stretch your arms, let out a quiet yawn, and let the fabric fall back down to your wrists. And that's the truth of it. Medieval bedtime clothing wasn't about seduction or show. It was about protection. From the cold, from bad dreams, from spirits wandering through thin walls. Because in the dark, when candles gutter and the dogs have gone quiet, it's just you, your shift, and the hope that you'll wake up safe in the morning. You adjust your blanket. It's a patchwork of fabrics now handed down through the family, each square stitched by a different hand in a different year. Some are from old tunics. One corner used to be a tablecloth. Another used to be someone's best festival dress. You like that part. The history, the softness of age. You turn onto your side again, the shift wrapping around your knees. The bed creaks. Outside, the moon hangs above the crooked roofs. Somewhere in the distance, a rooster crows too early or too late. Time doesn't always behave at night. You close your eyes and breathe in slowly. The scent of old linen of ash and wool of herbs hung to dry above the rafters. It all blends into a kind of calm. Because here in your crooked little bed, in your itchy nightshirt with one pocket stitched shut, you feel somehow held. You sit up a little as the room dims further, the last candle flickering into a low, uneven pool of orange. Your fingers fumble for something on the low shelf beside the bed. Not a book, not a clock, not a glass of water. You're reaching for a bone-handled toothbrush made of hog bristles, or more precisely a stick dipped in crushed charcoal or chalk, because medieval bedtime wasn't just about sleep. It was also, surprisingly, about rituals, and yours begins now. You press the makeshift brush to your teeth and try not to wince. It tastes like burned bark and mint gone bitter. Maybe you're lucky tonight it's just salt and sage. If it were a festival day, someone might have used ashes from the altar fire mixed with fennel seeds, not for flavor, for sanctity. There's a tiny pewter mirror on the wall, slightly warped from the heat of the hearth. You glance at it as you scrub, not to check your reflection, just to make sure you're still here, still you, still flesh, because once the lights go out, that line between this world and the next feels thin. One mainstream fact: medieval women, especially those in wealthier households, had bedtime rituals focused on both hygiene and spiritual protection. They might wash their hands and faces in rose water, brush their teeth with herb powders, and even anoint their foreheads with oil or holy water before bed. In nunneries, there was often a full routine of grooming prayers and silence. You splash a bit of cold water on your cheeks from a ceramic bowl. The water's been sitting out all day, and it's icy now. The jolt wakes you briefly, but in a pleasant, familiar way, like stepping into your own skin again. The old woman who sleeps near the hearth is mumbling now. She's whispering a prayer, not one from church, but one she learned from her mother. It's half spoken in Latin, half in a dialect even your grandmother couldn't translate, words that sound like wind through branches. It ends with a gentle knock on wood and the flick of a dried herb bundle placed near her pillow. quirky tidbit. Let's talk about demon-fending garlic. Yes, garlic. Not just for soup. Some women wore tiny pouches of garlic, dried sage, or even powdered toad skin around their necks while sleeping. Not for the scent, though that's definitely part of the experience, but to repel spirits. Bad dreams were believed to come from outside forces, not the mind. So a little garlic on your chest. That's basically medieval melatonin. You slide your rosary beads from beneath your shift and finger them slowly. Not everyone uses them. Maybe you don't even believe the way others do. But there's comfort in the feel of the beads, their polished smoothness, from years of hands just like yours. You mouth a short blessing. Something simple. Something just for you. Historians still argue whether these nighttime rituals were more about superstition or a genuine attempt at nightly holiness. But one thing is clear. Bedtime was when women became their own guardians. The day belonged to husbands, fathers, priests, or masters. The night. That was when they could draw their invisible line of safety. You wipe your hands dry on a corner of the bedspread and glance toward the fireplace. It's nearly out now, just glowing coals, no flame. That's when you remember the holy water. It's in a small wooden bowl beside the hearth. You dip 2 fingers in and make the sign of the cross over your forehead, then over the baby sleeping nearby, then over the door, just in case. You stand a moment listening. There's silence, but not emptiness. A room like this is always full of prayers, of sighs, of long-held fears. Some say the walls remember. That stone absorbs secrets holding them, until someone else whispers the same words centuries later. You light a bit of dried lavender and set it on a flat rock near the bed. The smoke curls upward like a question. It softens the air, weaving with the scent of wool and wood ash. You breathe in, slowly, and you remember something from your mother. Bad dreams can't catch you if your breath is slow and your hands are clean. The youngest girl in the room stirs. She's too young to care about rituals yet. She sleeps like a stone flopped across the straw with her mouth open and a bit of drool sliding down her cheek. You smile, because all of this bone brushes, lavender smoke, whispered charms. It's about preparing for sleep, not just as rest, but as passage. In the medieval world, sleep wasn't simple. It was a vulnerable state, a soft surrender to the unknown. You never knew what dreams might bring, or if you'd wake at all. So you prepare. You crawl back under the covers. The shift clings to your knees. You pull your kerchief tighter around your ears, tucking in the edge. You feel safer now. Outside, a wind howls gently through the thatched eaves. It sounds like a song half remembered, and as your eyes grow heavy, you feel it, the strange mix of fear and peace that belongs only to the night. You've done everything you can. Brushed, prayed, warded, blessed. Now sleep may come, and with it, whatever waits beyond the dream. It's dark now, fully dark, not cozy dark, not pull up your favorite quilt and read dark. This is the kind of dark that presses in around you thick and total, with no light bleeding in from beneath a door frame or blinking from a charger. This is medieval dark, and suddenly, you need to pee. The moment creeps up on you in the middle of your second sleep, the weird medieval halfway rest between sunset and dawn. Your eyes open to shadows, your body's cold, and your bladder, very much awake. You sit up slowly, pushing back the itchy blanket. The room's air bites at your arms. You reach blindly for your shift, tug it down over your knees, and try not to think about how far away the chamber pot is. Because of course, it's across the room. You slip your bare feet onto the floorboards cold as iron and begin the silent shuffle. Past your snoring aunt. Past the creaking beams. Past the place where that one spot on the floor always squeaks. You hold your breath. You make it. There it is, a squat ceramic pot with a cracked lip and a handle worn smooth by decades of desperate hands. Your medieval toilet, the chamber pot. Mainstream fact indoor plumbing was centuries away. Chamber pots were essential. Rich or poor, you had one, maybe more if your house had multiple rooms. In larger homes, servants had to empty them daily, usually into cesspits or down designated waste chutes known as garderobes. In smaller homes, well, you might just toss it out the door. Mourning, tidiness, optional. You do your business quickly and quietly. No flush, no privacy. Just the gentle slosh and a faint waft that's definitely not lavender. You wince, replace the wooden lid, and begin your return trek like a soldier retreating from the front. But not before you stub your toe on someone's shoe. Hard. You inhale sharply through your nose, gripping the bedpost for support. The shoe doesn't apologize. It's a shoe, but you curse it silently anyway, an old leather boot left in the wrong place again, and that's when you hear it. A scratching sound. From the wall, the ceiling. You freeze, not from fear exactly, but from the quiet alertness that comes when the world around you no longer feels still. Maybe it's a rat. Maybe it's just the timber settling. Or maybe, and this is the thought, you don't want, you've woken something else. Because here comes the fringe belief medieval women were taught that nighttime was when the veil between the physical world and the spirit world thinned. This was especially true during menstruation, childbirth, or death. Many kept iron keys or knives beneath their pillows to ward off night spirits. Others placed blessed herbs or crucifixes by the door. You glance at the bundle of herbs above the lintel. Still there, still dry. You take a breath and climb back into bed, pulling the covers up over your head this time, just for a minute. Historians still argue whether people truly believed in night spirits, or if those tales were more like folk customs passed down through generations. But either way, they shaped behavior. Women walked differently at night, slept with charms, lit candles not for light, but for protection. You lie still. Now the blanket's up to your chin, your eyes adjusted to the dark. And you think of the moon. Somewhere above your wooden roof, the full moon rides through a cloudy sky. You can't see it, but you feel it. You were taught to respect it. Women bled with the moon, dreamed under its pull, hid from it during certain phases. It governed crop cycles and sometimes moods. A full moon might mean madness or fertility or prophecy. A sliver moon loss. A blood moon. You don't even want to think about it. You remember how your grandmother once claimed to hear a woman wailing under the eaves on a moonless night. A banshee, she said. You thought she was joking, but she didn't smile when she said it. The scratching starts again. This time, it's unmistakably a rat. You sigh, roll over, and try to ignore it. Rats in the walls were as common as rain. They gnawed through grain sacks nested in straw mattresses, and sometimes even stole pieces of hair to line their nests. That last one might not be true, but it feels true at 3 a.m. You pull your feet closer to your chest and try to go still again. And as you listen to the rhythm of someone else's breathing, you're reminded of how fragile this peace really is. Night is not silent in a medieval home. It creaks, breathes, and rustles. It moves with the life that didn't sleep when you did. But you're back in bed now, safe under your itchy woolen blanket, your nightshirt twisted around your hips, the fire nearly out. And you smile just a little as you hear someone else get up and start their own slow journey toward the chamber pot. You're not the only one. You never were. A soft sound drifts through the walls, a woman humming. Low, rhythmic, more breath than melody. You know the tune. You've heard it since you were small. It's one of those lullabies passed from mouth to mouth, heart to heart, softer each time, shaped by distance and longing. You let it wash over you, and your thoughts start to drift, not just to your own bed, but to thousands of others. Tiny smoky cottages, high tower rooms, cold stone nunneries, and in nearly every one some woman is singing into the dark. Lullabies weren't just for children. They were for mothers, sisters, nurses, wet nurses, and midwives. They were a form of memory song sung because the words comforted, because they kept your hands steady when the baby wouldn't sleep, or when the silence felt too sharp. You shift under your blanket. Somewhere nearby, a child murmurs in her sleep, little hands clutching a piece of cloth as if it were treasure. She's heard the same song too, mainstream fact. In the Middle Ages, lullabies often doubled as prayers or protective chants. Some included references to saints or angels asking for peace, health, or protection from sudden death. A mother might sing to Saint Bridget for her daughter's dreams, or to Mary to soothe a sick baby. These songs were rarely written down. They lived only in women's voices. You hum it now just under your breath. It's the one about the little sheep who got lost in the forest and was found by a silver bird. It makes no sense, really, but it feels safe. The melody has changed over the years, twisted by accents and the way people forget endings. But the heart of it, the hush, the rise and fall remains. The child stirs again. Her mother reaches over and rubs her back in slow circles. No words. Just that simple, repetitive motion. It calms both of them. Quirky tidbit time. Some medieval lullabies were unexpectedly dark. One 13th century version ends with the baby being threatened with the devil if he doesn't sleep. Others warned of fairies who'd snatch away noisy children. Strange comfort, but in a world filled with real dangers, plague, famine, war. These threats weren't just tales. They were echoes of fear woven into melody. And still, the song soothed. You think of a woman in a village far from here. She's kneeling beside her sleeping child, her knees sore from hours in the fields, her hands rough, her eyes heavy. She sings the same lullaby, same words, same rhythm, and she feels just for a moment that she's not alone. Historians still argue whether lullabies shaped cultural memory or simply preserved it. Some believe they were tools of survival, helping exhausted women build a little mental space for themselves amid chaos. Others argue they were just habitual rote phrases, repeated without thought. But if you've ever watched a mother sing to her child long after the child has fallen asleep, you'll know it's more than habit. It's love. Repetition as ritual. You roll onto your back, the song still echoing inside you. And now, your mind starts to wander, just like it does when you're lying in that liminal space between sleep and not sleep. You see fields and distant churches. You see women in the flicker of candlelight, brushing hair, rubbing oil into cracked hands, whispering stories they'll never tell by day. And the children always the children, curled into shapes of safety, some beside their mothers, some alone clutching a carved wooden sheep or a rag doll stitched from worn linen. You once had a doll like that. Maybe her name was lost, maybe not. Maybe you buried her beneath the hearthstone when you turned 10, just like the village elder said, so she wouldn't carry your childhood into the adult world and give it away to ghosts. Yes, you remember now. That was a thing. You sigh into your pillow. Outside, the wind has stilled. The house settles. A log shifts in the hearth below, sending a warm, faint puff of ash-scented air up into the loft. And still somewhere, a lullaby hums. Someone else's voice now. Maybe it's real. Maybe it's only your mind playing tricks. But you hear it. And it holds you like a woolen shawl. You let your eyes drift closed again, pulled by the tide of melody. And if you dream, maybe it will be about a silver bird in the woods leading a lost sheep home. Sleep doesn't come easy every night. Not in the medieval world, and not for you right now. You roll onto your back blanket, tugged to your chin, and stare into the dark eyes open, seeing nothing. There's something in the air tonight, some heaviness, like the room is holding its breath. And it's not just you. You can tell from the way the woman on the pallet shifts, the slow creak of a bed rope tightening, the sigh that slips from a mouth not quite asleep, because dreams in the Middle Ages were dangerous things, not just whimsical nonsense or leftover thoughts from the day, but real powerful, sometimes frightening messages, or so they believed. You remember the stories. Everyone does. A woman dreams of a white stag and wakes to find her child feverish. Another dreams of a drowned nun, and the next day, the river floods. Dreams weren't private. They were shared, dissected, prayed over. So when you couldn't sleep, or when your sleep came too fast and brought strange images with it, you wondered if someone was trying to reach you. Mainstream fact. The medieval mind saw no firm line between the natural and supernatural. Nightmares were often seen as omens or demonic visitations. A bad dream might require penance. Some priests even offered dream interpretation, though results varied wildly depending on who paid the tithes. You turn your face into your pillow. It smells like old herbs and smoke. The scent is oddly calming. And here comes the quirky tidbit. One common cause of night terrors, according to 13th century texts, was eating cheese before bed. Yes, cheese. It was said to summon spirits or cause hallucinations. Some texts even warned against goat's milk after sundown, because goats, as everyone knew, were a little too familiar with demons. Still, you did have cheese with supper. Just a little. You try not to think about it. A sudden creak above makes you jump. Just the rafters settling. Or the cat. Or the soul of the miller's wife who died of a fever last spring. Who can say, to ward off bad dreams you whisper a charm you half remember? Something about iron salt and moonlight. Your grandmother taught it to you while shelling peas one summer. You don't know if it works, but saying it feels like pulling a blanket up from the inside. Historians still argue whether nighttime superstitions were personal protection or a kind of social control. Some believe these practices let women claim small rituals in a world where so much was out of their hands. Others say the fear of dreams kept people obedient, afraid, quiet, but lying here now in the stillness you understand. The night is a strange country, and every woman needs her own map. You remember that old story about the nightmare. Not just a bad dream, but an actual creature, a spirit that crept onto your chest as you slept, pressing the breath from your lungs. Some women swore they'd woken to see it crouching there, black, boneless eyes like coals. They'd wake, gasping, frozen, unable to scream. You feel a chill just thinking about it. To prevent that, you were supposed to place your shoes backward at the foot of the bed, or sleep with a broom beside you, so the spirit would be compelled to count every straw before attacking. A charmingly tedious curse. You nudge your foot against something at the foot of the bed. Could be your boot. Could be your cousin's. You whisper a thanks anyway. The woman beside you murmurs in her sleep a soft, garbled sentence that makes no sense. You don't ask. Night words don't belong to the waking. You sit up just a little, adjusting your head wrap. The cloth sticks damply to your cheek. You reach toward the window and press a finger against the wooden shutter. It's cold. You don't open it. No need to see the moon tonight. Instead, you settle back down, hands folded loosely on your stomach the way nuns sleep in stories. You think about tomorrow, about the bread that needs baking, and the chicken with the bad leg, about the child who wouldn't eat, and the neighbor whose cough sounds worse each night. All the things waiting in daylight. But you don't want to go there just yet. You let your mind float a little longer in the space between dream and memory. The blanket rises and falls with each breath. The room hums with the sound of slow sleeping lungs. And this is where the real magic of the medieval night lies, not in ghosts or spirits or cheese-induced visions, but in this pause, this hush, this shared silence between women who have done all they can and now simply lie together, waiting for the world to soften. You let your eyes fall closed. If the dream comes tonight, let it be kind. Let it bring you a field of lavender, a sky with stars, and no goats. You wake to a twinge, low, steady, familiar, not sharp enough to sit up, for not soft enough to ignore. A pull in your belly, a heat in your lower back. It's that time again, and in the dark, beneath a woolen blanket on a straw-stuffed mattress, in a room that smells like sheep and candle smoke, you feel the quiet solidarity of every medieval woman who's ever turned over at midnight with the same dull ache. Because menstruation, in the Middle Ages, it wasn't hidden. It was endured, managed, whispered about, sometimes feared, often misunderstood, and always inconvenient. You shift gently, careful not to wake the girl beside you. She's still breathing evenly. You meanwhile curl in a little tighter your hand, resting lightly over your abdomen like it might calm the tide. Mainstream fact: medieval women typically used cloth rags, folded linen pads, or even moss and wool as menstrual protection. Some sewed belts or ties into their shifts to hold things in place. There were no mass-produced supplies, no heating pads, no ibuprofen, just grit and herbs and rest if you could afford it. And that was rare. Work didn't stop. Laundry still had to be done. Chickens didn't care if you bled. You glance toward the shelf where you keep your bundle of dried herbs, lavender, marjoram, yarrow. Crushed into tea, they help with cramps. If you're lucky. If you're not, you endure. A quirky tidbit: some women place tiny amulets between their breasts or tucked under their pillows, inscribed with protective symbols to ease pain or calm the womb. One common charm showed a rabbit and a moon feminine symbols tied to the rhythm of the body and sky. Others carried coins etched with runes or wore coral beads. Coral, they said, steadied the blood. You breathe through another cramp. Slow, soft. Someone once told you the moon and the body danced in secret, that when the moon waxed, your womb stirred. When it waned, your heart pulled inward. It made sense in a way. The cycles, the tides, the pull of something you couldn't name. Historians still argue whether medieval women understood menstruation as a biological process or a spiritual one. The truth, probably both. It was seen as natural and supernatural, a cleansing, a punishment, a sign of fertility, a cause of madness. Women were warned not to touch crops or milk animals during their time lest they spoil them. But beneath all that, beneath the fear, the prayer, the restrictions, there was also community. Women helped each other, taught each other. Older sisters whispered tips. Grandmothers brewed strong tea. And on especially hard nights like this one, someone might stay up with you, rubbing your back in slow circles until the pain dulled. You wish someone were awake now, not to speak, just to know. You shift again, slowly wrapping the blanket tighter around your middle. Your night shift has a faint stain at the hem, old stubborn, nearly washed out. You've seen similar stains on everyone's clothes. You all pretended not to. But you noticed? You always noticed. There's a tin mug by the bed, cold now. But inside, yes, someone left a sprig of rosemary in the bottom. It smells sharp, calming. You hold it near your face and breathe in. You think of the wise woman down the lane, the one who never married, who talks to her herbs like they're old friends. She once gave you a little sachet of crushed bark and told you to bury it under your bed during your cycle. You did once. The pain didn't vanish, but you slept better that night. Maybe belief was enough. The pain rolls again, deeper now, but it passes. You're used to this rhythm, the wave and the pause. You wait through it, like women always have, quiet, stubborn, tired. Outside, there's a low rustling sound, a wind passing through trees, or maybe just the air shifting in the chimney. You press your hands together and whisper a soft prayer, not for a miracle, just for comfort, for sleep, for a little mercy. Because in a world with no diagnosis, no hot water bottles, no understanding of hormones, a prayer was sometimes all you had. The girl beside you stirs. For a moment, you wonder if she's awake. But no. She turns and falls still again. You envy that ease. You close your eyes once more. Tomorrow will come with all its tasks. You'll rise early, fetch water, sweep the floor, knead dough, hang laundry. You'll move like normal even when your bones protest. You always do. But tonight, for now, you simply lie here, breathing, waiting for your body to soften. And in that strange, achy stillness, you feel something odd, not despair, not even annoyance, but pride. Because despite everything, you are here, whole, living, enduring in the quiet way medieval women always did. You pull the blanket a little tighter, and slowly your breath deepens. Somewhere in the darkness, a hand brushes yours. It's brief, accidental maybe, the sort of thing that happens when two people sleep too closely on a too small bed. But still you feel it, warm, real, unspoken. You don't move away. In the medieval world, the bed was not just a place of rest. It was a stage, a battlefield, a sanctuary, a confessional. It was where secrets curled beneath woolen blankets and silence covered things words couldn't carry. You lie still now, that brief touch lingering in your skin, like a secret. Because whether the bed was shared by lovers, sisters, strangers, or something in between, it always held more than just bodies. It held stories, quiet ones. Mainstream fact beds were frequently shared in medieval households, not just by spouses, but by same-sex family members, servants, guests, even travelers. Physical proximity didn't necessarily suggest intimacy, but sometimes it did. And for women especially, that proximity could blur the lines between duty, affection, and rebellion. You shift under the covers. The woman beside you is asleep again, or pretending to be. Her breath is slow even. Her hair brushes the edge of your arm. You feel the warmth of her, there, steady, calming. Maybe it's your cousin, maybe a fellow servant, maybe someone who found her way to your bed out of fear or loneliness, or something she didn't have a word for. There are no spoken rules, just the hush of the chamber, the creak of wood, the slow breathing of two people trying not to make a sound. Quirky tidbit. In 15th century Europe, some marriage beds came with written contracts literally carved into the wood about who could sleep there and under what circumstances. Some women recorded dreams and feelings in the margins of prayer books they kept by the bed. The margins became more private than the bed itself. You trace the hem of the blanket with your thumb. It's fraying a little. A tiny thread comes loose and curls around your finger like a vine. You pluck it free. Historians still argue whether physical intimacy between women in the Middle Ages was socially accepted, ignored, or quietly punished. Most agree it was rarely acknowledged in official records because it didn't fit the structures men controlled. But personal letters, court testimonies, and diary scraps hint at something deeper: stolen kisses, long glances, shared beds, and shared lives. You think about the stories passed through whispers about nuns who clung to each other under the guise of sisterly affection, about widows who chose not to remarry because they were already enough for each other, about two women buried side by side, their hands clasped in the stone effigy above. The candle's been out for hours now, but you can still feel the room, the cool edge of the wall against your back, the shifting weight of the mattress, the steady warmth of her beside you. You remember your mother telling you that beds keep secrets, that they hold onto them like folded linens tucked in a chest, that long after the people are gone, the bed remembers. So you close your eyes. You don't speak. There's nothing to confess, nothing to explain. You just lie there in the breath-warmed quiet and let the closeness be what it is, whatever that may be. The blanket shifts again, and her arm brushes yours. Not hard, not searching, just there. Maybe you dreamed it. Maybe she did. But in this shared silence, you feel something deep and ancient, something that has always belonged to women and maybe always will. Because under the weight of 1,000 expectations, wifely duty, obedience, silence, sometimes the only place a woman could truly speak was without words in the dark between the sheets. You take one more breath, slow, soft. She does too. And in that rhythm, something sacred settles. You don't need to know the ending. You only need this moment: warmth, stillness, shared sleep. The candle's long gone, the coals have cooled, and the world outside has shifted into that strange stillness just before dawn, the hour when even the rats take a break. But not every bed is warm, and not every heart in the dark is calm. You lie there, breathing slowly, while somewhere beyond these thick stone walls another kind of chamber sleeps or doesn't. It's the convent dormitory, a place of silence, rules, and night-long wakefulness. A place where bedtime isn't about comfort, but discipline. You've never been inside one, but you've heard stories. Everyone has. In the quiet corners of your thoughts, you drift toward those stories now. The nuns sleep in rows, each in her narrow wooden bed. Some atop planks, others on straw mats. No pillows. One thin blanket. And always, always fully clothed. The body must not tempt. Not even itself. Mainstream fact. Monastic rules, especially in female orders, dictated every aspect of sleep. Nuns were often required to wake at specific intervals to pray interrupting rest deliberately to maintain spiritual vigilance. The hours of matins and lauds often struck just before sunrise. Obedience didn't stop with the daylight. And yet, within those quiet cloisters where walls were high and voices low, there were longings. Historians still argue whether medieval nuns sought intimacy or simply shared companionship in a world that demanded isolation. Letters between cloistered women show fierce affection, some of it spiritual, some of it not. What modern minds might label romantic, they described as divine friendship, soul twins, sacred unions, my only joy beneath heaven. You picture her now, one nun in particular. Maybe she's young. Maybe she joined unwillingly the extra daughter of a noble house traded for land or politics. Maybe she was devout. Maybe both. But she lies awake now, hands folded over her chest, eyes fixed on the rafters above, and she's thinking of her friend, the one who always laughs too loud at supper, the one whose hands linger when they pass the water jug, the one whose bed is just far enough away that they're never allowed to speak after dark. Except sometimes they do. Just a word, a name, a whisper that carries between palates like smoke. You've heard of these things. You've felt these things. The sharp sweetness of longing that has nowhere to go. The ache of connection inside a world that forbids closeness. It's not always about desire. Sometimes it's just about being seen, and the night sees everything. Quirky tidbit. Some medieval convents practiced custody of the senses, the practice of training oneself not to look, not to listen, not to touch. One abbess reportedly scolded her sisters for laughing in their sleep, believing even dreams needed discipline. Another banned all singing except during Mass, afraid it stirred the flesh. But the heart still hummed its own songs. In one known case, 2 nuns were chastised, not for sharing a bed, but for writing poems to one another. The poems survive. The punishment didn't. You sigh now, curled on your side, grateful for the room around you. It may be cold. It may be shared. But it's not silent like the nunnery. Not so stiff. You can shift, speak, hum, even laugh if you're quiet enough. The woman beside you stirs. Her hand brushes the blanket again. Just once. You think about how much of a woman's life was shaped by where she slept, and with whom. A noble woman with a curtained 4-poster bed and embroidered pillows. A peasant with a dirt floor and a bundle of rags. A nun with a bare board and a bell to wake her for prayers. The bed was her world. You wonder about those nuns now, what they dreamed about, whether they wept into their pillows or into their hands, whether they sometimes forgot their vows in their hearts, if not in their actions, whether they ever woke in the middle of the night and thought I am still here. Because that's what you're thinking now. You are still here, wrapped in a scratchy blanket, in a bed shared with someone who doesn't ask, in a house that leaks wind through its shutters, in a world that doesn't always understand you. But you're here, and you are more than rules, more than ritual, more than obedience or rebellion. You are a body and a heart and a soul, breathing softly, sleeping deeply, dreaming gently. You close your eyes and feel the hush of the convent echo in your own chest. And with that echo, you finally begin to drift again. The silence is deeper now, like a blanket stretched across the village, tucking even the restless into stillness. But not all beds are full. Somewhere down the lane in a crooked little house near the edge of the woods, a woman sleeps alone. Or tries to. You've heard about her. Everyone has. The widow. The strange one. The one who speaks to herself at the well and wears her late husband's coat on feast days. The one whose chimney never smokes quite enough in winter. Tonight she lies on her side, facing the wall, the only body in a bed built for two. Her feet don't even reach the other edge. The pillow beside her remains untouched. The blanket tugged only to one shoulder. The other side of the mattress is as flat and cold as the moonlit floor. And in her house, it's not ghosts that creak, it's memory. Mainstream fact. Widows in the Middle Ages occupied a strange space. They were free in ways married women weren't able to own. Property managed their own money. Even run businesses, but they were also isolated, marginal, talked about, watched, especially if they didn't remarry, especially if they didn't seem sorry enough. The widow in her cold bed rolls onto her back. The rafters above her are crooked with age. A single candle stub sits on the table beside her unlit. It's too precious to waste. Her chamber is still, and yet it holds so much. The dent in the mattress where he used to sleep. The robe she never washed after his last fever. The squeaky floorboard he always stepped on no matter how quietly he tried to sneak in after curfew. It's all still here. Historians still argue whether widows were feared or respected. Some were revered as wise women. Others were treated with suspicion, especially if they lived alone. Independence in a woman was often seen as inconvenient. You shift in your own bed, suddenly aware of the breathing around you, a shared room, a shared life, and you think of what it must be like to sleep without it. No shared whispers, no accidental touches in the dark, just you, and the ticking of the chimney soot, cooling. The widow rises sometimes, not often, but when she does, it's to place her hand on the hearthstone, whisper something, and return to bed. No one knows what she says. Some think it's a prayer. Some think it's a name. Quirky tidbit. In some regions, widows would place dried rosemary beneath the mattress for remembrance. Others sewed one of their husband's buttons into the hem of their shift, believing it anchored the soul. A few even slept with a black ribbon tied around their wrist to remember, but also to ward off the touch of other men's dreams. You imagine her doing just that, pulling the blanket up, turning away from the hearth, curling toward the cold side of the bed, and not crying. She's long past that. She doesn't cry. She just lies awake and waits for morning. Then there are the wards, young girls, orphaned nieces, distant relations placed in strangers' houses for a roof and a bowl of pottage. The kind of girls who sleep in corners on benches beside the dying embers of the fire. The kind no one really asks about. Tonight, one of them stirs. She's curled near the hearth, her hands tucked under her head, her cloak wrapped tight. The fire's gone, and her breath shows in the air. But she doesn't complain. She learned not to. You think about the things she's heard, the whispered arguments from the main bed, the scraping of a bowl, the sounds no child should understand. But tonight, She just sleeps, face soft, brow smooth, and above her, the widow lies still, her hand resting on the empty side of the bed. The village sleeps on, but some houses don't hold lullabies. They hold memories, and sometimes memories are louder than dreams. You pull your own blanket tighter, shift a little closer to the edge where the warmth is. A gentle inhale, a soft exhale, the comfort of not being alone. Because the truth is, sleep doesn't come the same to everyone. Some lie tangled in sheets of grief, others pressed into straw beside people they've never spoken to. Some whisper prayers, some whisper names. Some lie with their backs to the wall, their ears open, their hearts still listening for footsteps that will never return. And all of them, widow ward worker, wife, eventually surrender to the dark. Because even if the bed is cold, the night is long, and the body in the end always needs rest. You wake with a strange feeling. Not from sound, not from movement, just a shift. Like something ancient and deep has turned over in the world outside your shuttered window. The air is different. You can smell it metallic dry and oddly sharp. And then you remember. Tonight is the blood moon. You don't need to look outside. You feel it in your chest, a slow thrum under your ribs. The kind of night that pulls old stories from the bones of the earth. You sit up a little, just enough to hear the room. It's too quiet. Even the chickens outside are silent. No snoring from the mat. No coughing. Even the rats have gone still. Because on nights like this, everyone listens. Mainstream fact medieval people believed celestial events were messages from God, or, depending on the sky's hue, from something worse. Lunar eclipses were especially feared. A reddening moon was interpreted as a harbinger of war, famine, death, or divine punishment. It wasn't just superstition. It was survival instinct. You pull your blanket around your shoulders, the wool scratchy but grounding. Somewhere in the house, an old woman is whispering the Psalms, not the Latin ones, the old ones, the real ones, the ones passed down through voices, not books. Blood on the moon means sorrow on the ground, someone used to say. You think it might have been your mother. Quirky tidbit. During blood moons, some women refused to sleep at all. They sat up through the night, facing east, braiding red thread through their hair as protection. Others smeared ash across their foreheads or placed iron keys under their pillows to guard against sky poison, a supposed corruption that fell from the eclipsed moon into open mouths as people slept. You glance toward the shuttered window. The wooden slats glow faintly flushed with an eerie red light that creeps in through the cracks. You don't want to open them. You don't need to see it. Because the moon sees you. Historians still argue whether these beliefs were rooted in religion, pagan holdovers, or just natural fear of the unknown. But one thing is certain. When the sky turned red, no one slept well. Especially not women. You think of the midwife who lives near the edge of the village. She used to say, babies born during blood moons cried louder, slept less, and dreamed too vividly. One of them, she claimed, started talking at 6 months, and the first word was a name the mother had never spoken aloud. True. Who knows? But you remember that story, don't you? Tonight, no one dares to talk. Not even the dogs bark. You lie down again, tucking your hands beneath the blanket, feeling the little beads of sweat forming at the back of your neck. It's not hot, but the air feels charged, like the moment before a storm or before a scream. Your mind drifts to those women who lived through other omens, The comet of 1264, the eclipse of 1406, the year of 5 suns. They survived, they endured, they whispered over their candles and waited for the sky to right itself. And now, here you are doing the same, listening to the hush, watching the shadows on the wall, knowing the world outside has changed just a little for a few short hours. You remember being a child hearing a story from your aunt about a bride who looked up at the blood moon on her wedding night and forgot her groom's face. She woke the next morning thinking she was someone else, lived the rest of her life with a different name, no one ever knowing which one was true. You don't know what to do with that story now, but it stays with you, like all stories told by women in the dark. You roll to your side, heart, a little faster than before, mind louder than you'd like. There's a soft creak above. You're not alone in being awake. Someone else has felt it too. The shift, the pull, the ancient tug of something older than walls and beds and blankets. You don't say anything. Neither do they. Just lie there, breathing. And you wait. The blood moon will pass. The sky will pale. The red will fade. And everything will return to normal. Or close enough. But for now, you are a woman under a cursed sky, tucked into a borrowed bed, heart full of stories and silence. And that is enough. Dawn creeps in like a thief, not with songbirds or golden light, but with a grayness that seeps through the shutters, quiet and slow. You barely notice it at first. The shadows just soften the edges of the room, become less sharp. But you feel it, the way the air changes, the heaviness lifting from your chest. The blood moon has passed. The sky is normal again, or at least pretending to be. You stretch, carefully. Your joints pop, your blanket shifts, and you inhale the cold scent of hearth ash and wool. The woman beside you has already risen. Her side of the bed is still warm. You press your hand into it for a moment longer than you need to. She's across the room now, tying her shoes, quietly, respectfully, as if sleep still lingers in the corners of the room and shouldn't be startled. But you're not rising yet, not just yet, because you're remembering something, a different kind of night. One spent not in a chamber, but under a sky with no roof at all. You were a pilgrim once, maybe not far, just to the shrine 3 villages over, but far enough to sleep under strange blankets on strange soil, surrounded by the quiet rustling of other women, just like you, tired, blistered, uncertain of what they were hoping to find. Mainstream fact pilgrimages were one of the few reasons a medieval woman might travel significant distances. Some went for healing, others for penance. Many walked for someone else's soul. Pilgrims slept in inns, barns, chapels, or open fields, wherever they could rest their bodies before walking again. You remember the roadside inn with a broken roof, the smell of onions and wet wool. You'd curled up beside 3 other women, none of whom shared your language. But you shared warmth. And sometimes that was more than enough. You'd placed your shoes inside your cloak so they wouldn't be stolen in the night. Used your bag as a pillow and listened as one woman recited verses under her breath over and over, like a song she'd forgotten the melody to. Quirky tidbit. Some pilgrim women carried pebbles in their shoes, not out of penance, but superstition. The right stone could guide the feet or confuse devils. Others wore ribbons soaked in holy water or tucked tiny bones into pouches sewn beneath their cloaks. Protection, they called it. For the soul, yes, but also for the road. You turn your face into your makeshift pillow now, half lost in that memory. The frost on the grass, the ache in your hips, the quiet giggles as someone tried to change clothes beneath a blanket, the warning from an older woman to sleep with your knife close. Not all travelers are holy. Historians still argue whether pilgrim women were brave or reckless, pious or desperate. Maybe they were all those things. Maybe they walked not just for salvation, but for space, for a breath of freedom between walls, for a chance to become someone else, even just for a little while. You think of the woman who limped into camp at dusk, blood staining her boot, and still smiled when offered a crust of bread. You shared your water with her. She slept beside you that night, never gave her name. You never saw her again. Now, years later, back in your own chamber, in your own town, wrapped in your own blanket, you wonder what became of her. Did she reach the shrine? Did she leave her sorrow there as pilgrims were supposed to? Did she ever find a softer place to sleep? You reach down and rub your heel, remembering the blisters. Your bones ache a little more now. The pilgrim in you has faded, but not completely, because in some way, every night is a journey, from light to dark, from self to soul, from the woman you were that morning to the one who dreams. The door creaks open gently. A cold draft snakes across the floor. Someone's gone to fetch water. The day begins. The spell of night breaks, but for one moment, longer, you lie still, remembering roadside beds, shared bread, soft prayers, and the kind of sleep that only comes when you've walked farther than you thought you could and woken up whole. You don't want to move just yet. The light is here now, pale and colorless, spilling through the shutters like tired milk. It touches the floor first, then climbs the walls. The shadows retreat, but not in a hurry. You lie still, letting the light find you. Someone stirs in the corner. A cough. A quiet yawn. Another blanket shifts. Morning isn't loud yet. It begins like this every day and sighs and creaks in slow reshaping of the room from dream to duty. But something's different today. Today, there's time. One breath longer. One glance softer. One secret still waiting beneath your pillow unsaid. Because before the rush begins, before water is hauled, bread is needed, children shouted from their dreams, there is one final moment. To be a woman at rest. Not a mother, not a wife, not a servant, not a daughter. Just you. You stretch beneath the blanket legs, sliding against the coarse linen. The fabric is warm where you've been cold, where you haven't. You feel the ridges of the straw through the mattress. A sharp edge pokes your hip. You ignore it. Mainstream fact. In many medieval homes, the morning fire wasn't built anew, but coaxed from the coals of the night before. A sleeping woman often woke early to tend to the embers, stirring them gently, feeding them with dry kindling, blowing softly until the first flames leapt up. This was often a daughter's job, or a widow's, if the house had one. You listen for the first crackle. Someone's down there now. You smell the wood. Not pine too sappy, but oak. Clean, slow burning. Familiar. The hearth is everything. The heart of the house. The place where meals are made, herbs are dried, tears are shed, babies born, secrets whispered. Women sit beside it in every stage of life. Laughing, bleeding, dying, singing lullabies and scrubbing stains from a shift that's seen too many seasons. You think of all the women who have sat beside that fire. The ones who taught you, the ones you've forgotten, the ones who left and never came back, and the ones who stayed and stayed and stayed. Quirky tidbit. In some villages, it was believed that if a dying woman whispered her final secret into the fire, her soul would be carried upward through the smoke. That's why some women chose to die there, wrapped in a blanket, eyes wide open, heart still holding on to something warm. You picture it now. An old woman sitting by the fire. She beckons a daughter close, whispers something. No one else hears. And then slowly, she's gone. The flame flutters. The room breathes. Historians still argue whether this practice was symbolic spiritual or just a final act of control in a life where women had so little. Maybe it was all three, but the fire remembers. You sit up now. Slowly, the shift clings to your knees. Your hair is a mess. Your back aches. The room is brighter. And you see her, the older woman across from you. She meets your eyes for just a moment, then nods. No words, just understanding. The others stir. The day will begin soon. But for now, you rise, take your place by the hearth, and add one more story to the embers, because this is what women do. They keep the flame alive. Now let the light soften. Let your shoulders grow heavier. Let the story settle inside you, not in the mind, but in the chest, in the places that hold your quiet, your tired, your dreams. You have walked through the chambers of 1,000 medieval nights, touched stone walls warmed by candlelight, pulled scratchy blankets to your chin, whispered prayers in languages half remembered, watched blood moons and heard lullabies hummed in rooms where women barely had a name. You've lain beside them, laughed with them, ached with them, felt their fears, their longings, their stubborn kind of hope. And now it is time to let it all drift. The fire is low, the shutters closed again, the room dim. Everything has been said that needed saying. Breathe slowly. Let your fingers loosen. Let your thoughts float like dust in morning light. These women are not so far from you. They loved. They endured. They laid down their heads and tried each night to find just enough rest to begin again. So now, let go of the day. Let go of the centuries. Let go of the words. Sink into the blanket. Close your eyes. Let sleep take your hand. And if you dream, may it be of warmth, of bread baking, of soft hands brushing hair from your face, of silence that doesn't sting. You are safe. You are home. You are held.